room book at 11 o'clock. Thank God. Okay.
Like every time everyone comes in, like it was like, oh no shit.
Yeah, I'm quite interested in what's going on. Any dot points and tweet holes for like.
You stay?
I know.
Well, this is Amazon Web Services, and they just recently located in Adelaide, and they are looking also to employ people and to collaborate with people.
Okay.
So I mean, it's
I'd rather your lecture or here.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming along today, and thank you for giving myself and Andy some of your precious time. My name is Rob Absalom. I am the state lead and account manager for AWS here in Adelaide. We started in April in Adelaide, first boots on the ground. And Andy?
Yes, solution architect with AWS. So yeah, started similar time with Rob last year. Haven't met my boss yet, who's in Perth. So yeah, we both started in COVID days. So yeah, a lot of VC, and it's so good to be out about now.
So thank you again for your time. We've got a short slide pack that we're just going to run through, just talking a little bit about AWS and startups and what support we provide startups, what sort of programs we have available. I know some of you may already be aware of this, but it's a small group for us here, so let's make it a conversation rather than a presentation or a lecture. Please ask questions. I'm very happy to have more of a discussion than a one-way information feed. I guess an interesting just checkpoint. Are many of you guys using AWS, or are you guys on the platform? How much? Yeah, are you able to elaborate on what you're doing?
IoT, so we ingest data into a Postgres-based backend
And
on AWS, which I would actually have a specific question to, but we'll leave that to later.
he's the solution architect. He's your man. And do you do anything with that data? Do you proceed to insights and
at the moment, it's more visualization rather than a large amount of analysis, but that's obviously what we have.
Yeah. Okay. No, great. Carl, I know you do.
Yeah. So we're a partner with AWS. I think we've been a partner for over 4 years. So we do consulting in data analytics. In terms of what we do, just going through our reference architecture this morning, it covers ingesting IoT through IoT Core. We build data lakes, we build our data analytics using DB, different databases, Postgres, etc. We've been using SageMaker for a couple of years as well. So since basically it came out, that's early release notes. So yeah, there's a lot of services on AWS. We probably use 30 to 40 of them, which is a pretty solid out. There's 100. I think
200.
Is it 200?
It depends
Well,
on
so much
what feature or service is getting a bit blurry.
Who wants to keep up with that?
Oh, it's hard. Yeah.
Hi, so I run Go Micro. This is my co-founder and CTO at Torrent. So what we are doing, we are building, I believe, the world's most accurate test detection AI.
Oh,
And our key advantage is that test detection, the average is around 70 is the max that people have managed to get in field conditions. We are shooting for 90.
okay.
We are there. And what we do is we create imaging devices that gives clean data on a phone. So we have a device that gives clean data. So AI is junk in, junk out. For clean data, it's super precise. So we're going to launch something for major test, global test called Fall Army. Okay, the major test infestation in South Australia. So we are in people working in Kenya, Sri Lanka, and Australia to give us data. And next week we are planning to launch the most accurate test detection.
Exciting. Yeah, congratulations. So that's image recognition and
Maybe Jared can.
Yeah. So we're just sort of using a sort of standard AI with that sort of thing. We're using sort of like Lambda, API, KOA, so
so you haven't got into recognition. Sorry.
They're not going to tell you their secrets.
Imaging company.
Yes, yeah.
So I run.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well done. Well done. Have we got people online as well?
Yes, we have 4 people online.
Okay.
Not a lot, but more our members are online that couldn't make it here today.
All right. I'm not sure if there's any speakers. So are they able to ask questions or anything?
Yes, they can ask questions online as well. If I've got any, and then I'll tell you if they have any questions.
All right. Yeah, no dramas, no dramas. Anything else from people in the room that, in terms of the platform before we move on? No? All right. Well, it's good to hear that there's certainly a number of you using AWS. Like we said, we've got so many different services and a lot of different capabilities. Just pull up a couple of very local examples of startups on AWS. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Precigen or Life Whisperer is probably better known. They're one of the startups based in Adelaide who use AWS very heavily. They've built a health platform and they're doing analytics on that platform. Life Whisperer is the first use case, if you want to put it that way, that they've built on the platform, which is all about looking at embryos through the IVF process and using image recognition and machine learning to identify the most successful embryos for IVF implantation. So basically increasing the success rate of the whole IVF process. Yeah, they use AWS end-to-end and do a lot of work with us. They've been able to scale globally into all sorts of jurisdictions. Health data, as a lot of you guys would be well aware, there's a lot of data sovereignty around that. So being able to use a global platform, they can replicate this in the different jurisdictions and tick the boxes around data sovereignty. Another example here is Fivecast. Again, a South Australian startup, very successful. They are moving into the US right now. Again, machine learning, AI, data. As I'm sure you guys are well aware, that the new world really is all about data. So what these guys do is threat detection, which is a complex area right now, especially the geopolitical time that we live in. But it's really about threat detection using data from all sorts of different sources, social media sources and the like. So they're based up in North Adelaide. There's a couple of good examples of startups in Adelaide and some successful scale-ups. So both of those have been able to scale up. They've both had a lot of investment. They've both been able to use the global platform to get into new jurisdictions. Very close to where I'm sure you'd be looking to go as of next week, which is fantastic. A whole lot of more examples. I mean, you guys would be well across the whole startup ecosystem, but there are a lot of examples of startups building on AWS with a platform, and it's to be honest, no different from the other cloud platforms. But getting into cloud, there's no capex; it's all opex. So from a startup's perspective, the barrier to entry, the capex barrier to entry is gone now, which is fantastic. But there's also a lot of support programs which I'll go through now, which again reduce that barrier to entry from the digital perspective and really help you guys set up, scale up. You can start paying the bills once you're a sustainable business. So what are our startup programs? In AWS, we have a startup segment. So we have a whole segment within the organization globally that focuses exclusively on the startups. We're not in that segment, but this particular facility crosses across so many different segments that we thought would represent the whole of AWS for you guys today. And more than happy to introduce you guys into the specific segments as you're interested. So I'll provide my contact details after this, and happy to route you guys to the right areas within the behemoth that is AWS. But going through, we'll talk through Activate credits, free compute, free platform, free access to the platform, which I'm sure is a positive for all of you guys. NBI is an Activate provider, and Carla will hook you into that whole ecosystem there to make sure you guys are across what that is and how to hook into that. So through NBI, there are, I think it's $5,000 of credits that you guys can get, given that you're based here, to really start on that Activate journey. We'll talk about solution architecture, which is where Andy and his people come in to support from a technical perspective. Logs, case studies, PR. So we've done a lot of, with Prestigen or Life Whisperer, we've been doing a lot of PR to help them raise their profile through our networks, raise their profile globally so that they can then get into funding conversations and VC discussions and all of those good things that you need to do as a startup as you start scaling up. And we'll talk briefly about these other aspects of enterprise connections, capital connections, global startup programs, etc. So Activate is it's basically a program where we provide credits to startups to help you to reduce that barrier to using the platform, help you start scaling and reduce your costs in the early days, get to the point where you're a sustainable business, and then I guess once you're sustainable, you're able to pay your way. There is the founders, the founder tier is basically 1K, so anyone can go on there as a startup, apply, you can get your $1,000 of credit straight off, and that's fairly straightforward. Through the NBI, you can get up to $5,000 of credits. Again, fairly straightforward, and help you use the platform. However, as you scale up, the journey that you're on right now that you were just describing, there is up to 100K in credits, and this is all US dollars. 100K in credits available to really help you scale up and drive the growth of your business and help get you global. So that's the easiest and I guess the most obvious program that we have available for startups. Are there any questions on that before we go on?
Are you eligible for like the different tiers? Like with going through the NBI credits, are there like follow-on credits within?
Yeah, so it goes up to, as I say, the 100K.
Yeah.
There are criteria.
Those sort of tiers.
Sorry?
You can get multiple sort of runs.
Yeah. So it's not just you get your 5K and that's it.
Yeah.
Once you've used that, you can apply if you correspond to the criteria to that next level and keep going through that process. Absolutely. Yeah. And I can put you guys in touch with Sarah Stevenson, who's our account manager for the startups here in Adelaide, and she'll be able to work with you guys. So I've got some cards here, so I'll leave the cards and just get in touch with me. No other questions? No questions online?
No.
All right. Do you want to? I know I've kind of sprung this on you a little bit, but just in terms of solution architecture.
Yes, I mean, my role is to support our customers within South Australia on the technology side. So we've got a ton of services, and ultimately we just want to solve problems or help you guys solve problems in the most efficient manner. So being a startup, you kind of have that advantage of lack of legacy. So talking about Lambda API Gateway, if you can leverage the services, that's super cost effective. But I can, whatever problems you've got, if you've got some questions around different aspects of the technology side, can walk through that. That's over time as well. So whatever stage you're at, there's one of me for the state, so I'm pretty busy. But we can pull in different specialists as well from the broader organisation, whether that's IoT, machine learning, the broader Amazon. We've got now about 10 people in Adelaide on the Amazon Science side. Just doing AML, so they're advancing the fields. PhD in maths is the entry point, and they get more crazy from there. But if you've got something super specialist, niche in an area, then if I can't cover it, I can pull in the appropriate person.
So your example where you're starting to look at something specific in the tech stack, that's where Sarah works with a guy called Ben.
We'll just email you.
You know Craig Lawton, right? Yeah.
This is research work in AI.
Yes. Yeah.
And how do you work with startups on that? I mean, I'm sure you already on it.
So that specific piece, the Anton Bunn and Engel with his research guys, they're working for Amazon.com. They don't work for AWS. So they develop their own research book for Amazon. That may well translate through the Amazon hierarchy into services that come out through AWS. But at this point, that's not a direct translation from what they're doing into enterprise. They're more of an internal function. But we do have ML support people around the country where we bring in. So this is where the likes of Andy is really a lightning rod for those tech questions, and he can bring in a specialist as required if he can't answer those questions.
I just on here, well architecture reviews. This is probably a bit more down the track, as you mature. So the sort of kind of MVP get up and running. And then over time, it's the priority list of, you're just churning out features initially, but eventually you probably want to, harden up the security, improve availability, all that sort of stuff. So it's a tool within the platform as well you can use yourself, or I can help with that. Iterate over time just to raise the bar on the series of features.
And if you're on the cusp of scaling, it's probably well worth looking at. Just going in, if you go into the console, there's a well-architected tool in there. And it's essentially a questionnaire. So it sounds like you're familiar with it.
It's Q&A based rather than, like an API service, but it's it's just thought-provoking. And you answer honestly, then it'll call out any high-risk items, things like that. And it just, again, helps prioritize what you're working on. It's kind of probably stuff that's in your head anyway, but helps order it, and you can revisit it and you snapshot it, and work on it over time just to keep improving.
And one thing I would say to you guys is, don't think that you're too small for malicious actors in the state, around the world to go after you. We had a call from a startup a little while ago, a few weeks back, and they had their database held up for ransom. We were able to resolve it, thankfully, for them. Security is real, and security is a threat for all of us. So just some simple things. Turn on two-factor authentication. Just do it. I know it's inconvenient, it's a pain in the ass, we all hate it. Just do it. Guard Duty is a service that we offer. Turn it on. It won't cost you very much at all. It'll be a few dollars a month, but it'll just help raise your security, that little step. Just be mindful of security. Don't think that you're too small for people to notice if your security posture is lax.
Yeah, there's a whole pillar in the well-architected framework around security. And this poor customer recently, there's some really bad practices followed. They lost a key that was over 3 years old, and God knows when they lost it. But that was escalated, and it's kind of like a company-ending event. Just the whole database gone. And normally we can't get that back. It's just lucky on a timing thing, and the product team got under the hood big time and managed to dig out what they need to do. But it's pretty rare. Sort of you own your infrastructure, and you're responsible for that.
So within the AWS world, as you probably all seen, we talk about a shared responsibility model. So we'll make sure that the physical environment, the physical data center is secure. We'll make sure that we provide all of the security tools for you to use to make sure your environment's secure. It's up to you to make sure that what you're doing on the platform, then you use those tools to make sure it's secure. We can't secure it for you. You have to take accountability for that. And do think about security. It's hard in the startup space where you're just running, you're getting features out there, you're looking to scale, you're looking to grow. Don't forget about security, because that could be the end of it all.
That's the other advantage of using cloud-native serverless technologies. That line of what you're responsible for goes higher. So it's just your code within Lambda. You've got no OS to manage or patch or run if you're running infrastructure as a service. So startups have a ton of advantages in that space.
The other thing about the well-architected architecture is there is a pillar around cost optimization. So a lot of the focus that Andy and all of the solution architects are actually KPI'd on reducing what you guys spend on the platform, which is, it seems a bit odd from a vendor's point of view. But from our point of view, the reason why we do that, why we have that focus, is because we look for a long-term relationship with our customers. We want you guys to be using the platform for the long term. So if we can make sure that you're using it in the most efficient way possible, you're saving dollars there, we're hoping you then reinvest that back into new services, new capability in the platform, and you're a winner, we're a winner, everyone wins.
That's baked into the culture. So we're always trying to refine, get better, pass on savings to customers ultimately. And we've dropped prices like 200 times since 2006. And so the latest release of sort of disk storage, it's quicker and cheaper. So it's kind of a no-brainer to move on to the latest version. And it's something we do just over time.
So that's all in the console. You guys can run it yourself if you're using the platform and look at what you're doing against recommended best practice and get recommendations there and how to improve.
Yeah, I'll call out if there's an instance with 1% utilization or something, some that box you spun up and forgot about. I'll sort of call those sorts of things out.
Are there any questions on this area before we move on? Come on, there's got to be a few questions. No? All right. This is more on the marketing and the PR side of things. But AWS, we do have a lot of content up online. If you look on our websites, there's a startup website, and on there are links to our blogs. There's a lot of PR, and as you get more involved in the platform and as you start scaling up, there's the opportunities for us to do joint PR, which is what we did for Prestigen over there, and really got their name up and in lights globally. So that's definitely something worth thinking about at the right time, and as you when you've got a real story to tell.
Another one sort of linked to that. We always we love our customers. We are customer obsessed. It's genuine. Sage Automation and Newcon, we're trialing a new service in preview ahead of reInvent, which is our annual conference where we release a ton of stuff. So as part of reInvent, they had a customer quote, their logo's up, and it's got massive reach globally. So there's quite a few opportunities. This being more formal, but then others as well. Like if you're working with the platform, looking at preview things, we love customer quotes. It's the most powerful thing. Sort of seeing our customers be successful.
So that was with a very pertinent Industry 4.0. That was all about defect detection on manufacturing lines. So using recognition, which is one of our services, but then building on top of that to be able to train a model to say what's good and what's bad, and you just have the automatic defect detection. So it's called look out for vision. There we go. and it was trialed here with Sage, which is fantastic, and then launched globally. So there are those options. A couple of other key things to maybe pull out of here. Congress here and there, but the APN, that's the AWS Partner Network. So we have two different types of partners. We have the consulting partners, and Carl and his group sit in that consulting partners. So that's really where you provide professional services on the platform. But we also have what we call our tech partner program. And our tech partner program is for those that are building and selling solutions built on AWS. And the intention there is AWS has a massive sales machine around the world. We've got, probably any organization that you're targeting, we probably have a connection in there somewhere. Our tech partner program is really giving you guys the hook into that sales machine, so that you can co-sell, co-brand, co-go-to-market, essentially. So if you want to go global, you want to tackle a specific market, if your solution is built on AWS, well, let's have a look through the tech partner program and how we can help you get into that market, what connections or what PR or what activities we can do together to actually get you access to that market. So this is less about the technology side or the cost side and more about the growing the revenue side. And a component of that then is Marketplace, AWS Marketplace, which is where you guys can put your products up in the marketplace so that people can essentially buy them through that marketplace. All the T's and C's are agreed. Everyone that's signed up to AWS can just go in there and buy it around the world. So basically, it's global access for you guys to get stuff out to the globe. And that's the marketplace is a component of being on the Tech Partner Program in the APN, the AWS Partner Network.
So again, local example with Newcon, Sage Newcon, they built a SaaS called Tillit, which aims to simplify like factory floor ops around that. So integration between sort of man and machine. So yeah, they're going to leverage that, starting local, but with a global outlook. The companies they're dealing with are global, so it's easier for them. You don't have to try and set up a relationship in country. You can just leverage the platform where they've already got that relationship set up. So it's kind of a way of just removing some friction.
Does that make sense to you guys? Is that topical for yourselves?
Yeah.
There's a number of other things there. CXO events, there's always the opportunity to put on customer events locally or in other jurisdictions, depending on what the interests are. Migrations, there is support through the startup program if you wanted to migrate whatever you've got onto the AWS platform, wherever it's coming from. There are supports and programs and mechanisms to help you do that. And lastly, the Climate Change Fund or the Climate Fund and the Alexa Fund, those are essentially AWS VC funds. They have specific criteria attached to them, as you can understand. But they are VC funds available for specifically sustainability and climate, anything to do with climate and climate change. So something to consider. If you think the story that you're developing within your organization has a good link, it's worth having a look at. And that was pretty much it that we were going to go through. Lots of startups in AWS, a lot of the Salesforce in AWS, Airbnb. You can see all the way through there a lot of logos that we all recognize. Their little lives now are built on the platform. So it's eminently scalable. It can take you global very quickly, very easily. And we're doing all we can to lower the barriers to entry to make it as easy as possible for you guys to build and start scaling on the platform.
Just have some more local ones in there. I was looking for Vino Mofo.
Yeah.
We only talk about the customers, obviously, if they're happy to. So yeah, I've got a ton in my head which I can't mention, but yeah, we should have some more in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was pretty much it. Fairly short and sweet. But that's really where we're at. We are based here, so Andy and I we live in Adelaide, we're based in Adelaide, we're parochial South Australians. We want to support the ecosystem here. We've got our office in another precinct, which I won't mention. But we're here and we want to support
Real precinct.
Yeah, we've got a meetup group, user group that meets once a month as well. So if you want to come and learn more, join that and get notified when there's events. We could run one down here actually, if there was interest. But yeah, so it's not really, it's for the community, by the community.
We had I think we had about 80 people last time to put on things, food, and basically it's about the industry talking about the use of the platform. So I'll ask what the use of the platform because I think it's a bit tiresome after a while.
Yes, the one coming up in a couple of weeks, which I need to post. It's basically around deploying the highly available on a beer budget, might be the tagline. So yeah, just getting a lot of value out of the platform in a very efficient way. But yes, someone's done it and sharing their story. So yeah, come along for beer and pizza and a bit of tech.
Had a question online.
Yeah, sure.
Where is the AWS service located in Australia?
Sydney is where we have our primary data center right now. We have announced another data center in Melbourne, which will be up at the end of next year.
Just to clarify, region. So a region is a bunch of availability zones, and each availability zone can be one or more data centers. So it's not like there's just one facility. So Sydney, there's 3 availability zones, and just to scale, it's probably not just one. The availability zone, it's probably more, but we don't disclose that level of detail. But yeah, there's 3 completely isolated spots you can deploy in Sydney, but with another one of those scheduled mid next year to be online in Melbourne. So Sydney is about 20 milliseconds away. Melbourne will be 10 milliseconds away. So depending, if you've got latency sensitive things from Adelaide, not too bad.
So Melbourne would be part of AP2.
No,
so it's
it's a totally. So it's like Hong Kong or somewhere else. Yeah.
So we talk about regions, availability zones, but then you have local zones and
yes, there's some other constructs, so less relevant in Australia, but there's edge locations. So there's one of those in Melbourne already, and one in Perth, which is like an edge cache. So there's AWS network there. So we've got a global 100 gig plus network. So if you're serving content to, say, someone in Perth, you can cache it in Perth, but you can't spin up instances currently. So in the US, they're deploying local zones, which is like a cut down region. So they're going to be, once they've deployed the announced local zones, you'll be anywhere in the US in single millisecond latency, which is kind of bananas. But US company, personally, I would have deployed in some other places like Perth. Perth's closer to Singapore than it is to Adelaide. But I'm obviously biased. It's everything we build, or 90 to 95% of the things we build is driven by customers. And the other 5% is customer oriented, but you might not have specifically asked for it. But yeah, almost everything is customer driven, and it's a priority list. We chew through it as fast as we can.
I should probably take a little bit of a step back for those of you that aren't familiar with the AWS platform and the cloud environments. The AWS is more than just a servers in someone else's data center. It's more than just infrastructure. And a number of you would know that. I'm not sure about those of you that haven't used the platform. But so yeah, I'll throw a better step back and actually answer the basics. So the cloud platforms now, yes, there are servers in so we call EC2. You can just get a server and do whatever you need to do on that server. However, there's a lot more services available on the platform now. So there's IoT and IoT services collecting data from devices. We've got edge computers, so you can actually get edge devices that you put out and can collect either data or can be massive data stores. We've got I've gone back to
like more generally, we call it undifferentiated heavy lifting. So particularly relevant to startups is, you can spend time administering a database if you want, but really that's probably not where you're adding value to your customers. So the whole point of cloud is you can just leverage world-class database. You just turn it on, turn it off, you don't need it, make it bigger, make it smaller. You just pay for what you use, but you're not burning your own time, securing it, patching it, all that sort of stuff. And that applies, across compute, but across databases, across storage, across AI/ML, across IoT, across everything. So, you build your IoT product on top of the core services, because, you could build that core service yourself, but that's not really adding value to your customer. So you can just leverage that with baked-in security. Doing more like yourself would take a ton of time to do it well. So you can leverage it, and it's choice. You can leverage higher up services as much as you want. So if you're doing crazy, groundbreaking AI/ML, you can just leverage, the raw GPUs, whatever you want. Do everything yourself. But if you're just wanting to, determine something higher level and do less of that heavy lifting yourself, the higher level services will, do speech to text, text to speech for you. You don't have to go build that.
My question is about Amazon Alexa. We don't know how can be compatible or product with Amazon Alexa.
But that's probably a conversation we can have specifically with yourselves. Alexa is all about, as you say, that natural speed, natural.
Yeah. So what was
language.
What was the question?
We don't know how can we use Amazon Alexa to compatible with our program.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, for sure. So,
We don't know anything
okay, I know, whereas I can point you at some quick starts and demos where you can just try it out, just sort of stand alone, and then you'll sort of see how you can integrate that. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We can talk about that afterwards if you like. Yeah.
Yeah, to your question. So many questions from Joseph. Well, so will there be data centers in the future in SI? He asks. But then it ties in with the next question. What is the back for disaster recovery? Where
Adelaide, we're probably not going to have a region in Adelaide, to be entirely honest. However, what we would like to see, and this is something that Andy and I have to work on to get the business case up internally. We would like to see that you can at least establish a direct connect straight into the AWS network from Adelaide. We haven't got there yet.
So that would be the edge locations. We'd have like a cache for serving content, but you could also, so probably more relevant for bigger customers, we can build a private line to the edge location, and then all the way back to the region over AWS's network. Whereas today, you can either use a partner, or you've got to build a link from here to Sydney or from here to Melbourne, which is super expensive. It's big.
So what was the second part of that question?
so if there was
Backup and DR.
a disaster recovery.
Yeah. So within the region, the different availability zones can be used for that, because they're probably single-digit milliseconds apart, but kilometers apart. So you can't fly over there. If you fly a plane into one of them, the other two are going to be totally fine. You fly one of them, the other two are going to be totally fine. But you can always use another region if you haven't got to the data sovereignty issues. But just on, if you did need something local, there's a whole world of edge compute. So that goes from sort of kind of the IoT side. But there's a ton of services, Snowball, Edge doing compute. Snowcone is a smaller version, which is like a ruggedized box that you can do edge compute with. All the way up to something called Outposts, which is basically an AWS rack you can buy. And it's an extension of the region to wherever you deploy this rack. And there's 1RU and 2RU versions of that coming if you really needed to. So say you're like a mine site and you want to just, all your devs want to just develop in the same way. Most of the stuff's in the region, but you need like some operational system in the middle of nowhere. You have that 1RU box and you just deploy it either in the region or you deploy it to your site. So,
because then it says afterwards again, my tech will said Cosmos DB have its limitations compared to Postgres. How will AWS address these concerns?
I don't know Cosmos. I can take it offline.
Yeah, I'll connect you with,
For those more detailed questions, that's probably where we have a one-on-one conversation.
More generically, it goes back to the undifferentiated heavy lifting conversation and tied to databases. Historically, everyone's just thrown stuff into a relational database because that's what they've had. In cloud, I think we've got 9 genres of database. So from like NoSQL, SQL, like hot caches like Redis. So it goes on your graph databases. So you can use the right tool for the job now more easily, and you scale it to size. And if you had to run and maintain 3 types of databases yourself, you probably wouldn't. You just use your one that you maintain and kind of jam in the data and make it work. But in cloud, you've got more flexibility to use the right tool for the job.
That's probably something, I guess, for those that haven't used the platform, it's worth just elaborating on. There is no license fee for AWS. There's no upfront fee. So you can just turn it on and turn it off, and that's it. And you pay for what you use. So it's a very simple commercial model. There's no big upfront hump in terms of cost that you have to get through. So we were doing a proof of concept for a group here in Adelaide, a utility around data, and we've put their data up there into a data lake. So that's another alternative to databases. We've run some insights using SageMaker. We've come out with these insights. It cost them $2. So in terms of platform usage,
Turn it off when you're done, but the serverless stuff is super cost effective. I think you get like 1 million invocations of your code a month in the free tier. So there is a free tier if you want to learn and play. Not everything's in the free tier, but it's pretty clear. But you can definitely try it all out. I think for the first year, try most things for free. But if you're sensible about it, it's cents, small dollars to try things.
Just go back to the question around DR and backup. The way cloud works is that you do have these different regions around the world. So what you can do, we're talking about infrastructure as code, is basically everything that you have set up in cloud can be set up as a code file. And really, in terms of DR, you can take that code file and deploy it in another region, which is another data center somewhere else in the world, and you can have that up and running quite quickly, or you can run it as a kind of a hot DR. If you want to take a step back from that and just look at backups, you can have an account that you set up in Singapore, and you just back up to that account of, that's your backup of last resort, decouple it from all of your other accounts so no one can see that it's there if someone does get into your org structure. There's a whole lot of ways you can do that, but it's all there, all very available, and all quite simple to use.
I would take another question. Okay. When we develop new platforms and all the things about new startups, not all startups have an IT or coding background. And when you start to all these things, like you must have someone that is related to that field as your partner to be able to have a confidence to get into it.
Yeah.
What about someone that comes up with a product that is not IT related, and how can the AWS platform, benefit them?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's a good question. I guess what I'd suggest is almost everything that we build these days has a digital component. Even if it's not collecting data and doing something with data, it's about your business and being able to track your sales or track data around your business activities. How would you get into this? This is where you talk to people like Kale over here, our partners. And
how that's in there, like you come to the user group and talk to people, but number two is just try it. You might be surprised. So everything under the hood is an API. You can use an SDK. There's a CLI, but there's also the console, which is GUI, graph-based. So if you can drive a web page, you can drive the console, and that's where you go from, traditionally the lower level services. If you want to get in there, in the rats and mice in the weeds. But to your point, a ton of customers don't need that level of dials and specialization. So if you want to, you can go to the console, load an image, and it'll tell you, it's like 78% chance it's cat. So there's no technical skill in that, really. So you can try things out, and then when you know it's going to do what you want to do, then at that point, maybe take the next, either learn yourself, which might be okay, or engage someone to sort of take that to the next level and automate it, codify it. But yeah, don't be afraid of breaking anything. And just have a go and have a look. So there's every service, there's a quick start. There's a ton of tutorials, like you Google, how to build a static site on S3, simple storage service. You can follow through that in the console pretty easily, and it'll just serve static content for you.
Having said that, it would just a word of caution: just watch your costs, because when you're playing, if you can spin up, it's just click and you can spin up all sorts of different services. They can cost you a fair bit of money if you're not careful. So you do have to just watch your, and all of the tools are there to be able to show you.
Rob's been there too many times. But like in all the tutorials, will say this is how you clean up. So some are even automated templates. So you want to just click a button and it will build you, like a web server DB stack, and then you can just like undeploy and it'll clean it all up, delete it all. So it always sort of gives you an idea of, this is free tier, or this is going to cost, $1 or $2 or something, and at the end it'll say now clean up, shut it down, turn it off, delete it. So you do want to turn it off if you're not using it.
But I guess to your point, because you'd be busy just trying to get your product out there and market your product and etc. I mean, I can't imagine you've got time then to go learn a new tech stack.
Yeah, exactly.
So that really is where our partners come in. So Kale sitting over here, he does a lot of work with data. We have other partners that are more the software development side of things. We have other partners that are more infrastructure side of things. So there's a big consulting partner network that we can help introduce you to. And of course, there's dollars involved. So we
go from like Deloitte to Daryl. So Daryl's the man with the company from Fivecast. So it's broad. Don't think like consulting means Telstra, 100 grand to get out of bed. There's a continuum of people that can help.
Yeah, in the startup space, we've probably got 4 consulting partners here locally that would typically work in the startup space and understand startups, understand the commercial pressures that you guys are under, and have models that work within that.
There's more questions online. So does AWS data center meet GDPR regulations? I'm data center in Australia, or do I need to to have an instance in EU to serve EU clients?
The answer is yes, it does support GDPR, which is privacy. It's all about data privacy, customer privacy. Yes, and if you search AWS GDPR, you'll see a whole lot of content on that. You can do it in the data centers here, or you can do it in the EU. The services are there wherever you want to use them. So yes, it can, and we're working with a number of groups that are doing exactly that.
There's a more generic comment around that sort of thing. You know, like you can't go to an AWS data center. I think there's like a virtual tour online now, but we have third-party accreditation. So if it's for like SOC, ISO, even also for IRAP in Australia. I think like for IRAP is like Australian government protected data. We're up to about 100 services out of the loosely 200. So you can use these services for those sorts of workloads, but it still depends on what service you're using. So EC2, like compute platform, is certified for that, but then how you run your OS and your app on top of that, you would have to certify if you wanted to be IRAP certified. If you're using Lambda, you've got less to do. Lambda's certified, and so you just be getting your code assessed for whatever certification you're looking at. Yeah. So again, as a startup, you wouldn't want to be certifying hardware in some data center and how your security controls in and out of that data center with an auditor. It'd be just a train wreck and expensive. So the higher level services you can use, there's less for you to do on that compliance side if that's an issue for you.
Compliance is a bit like security. However, there's a shared security and a shared model there, responsibility model. So we'll do everything we can in terms of what we can certify or what we can ensure complies. But then your use of those services need to comply as well. Is there another question online?
Not yet.
No.
No questions.
Does that answer your question about how to get into the platform, how to start using the platform?
I see you every day.
Yeah.
Because currently now I'm sort of getting really into the IoT industry. I have my friends just one with it, and then lots of my suppliers, everyone's building their own platform. Everyone has a platform, but then their platforms are running off other people's platforms. So why build mine directly off who they're getting it from, or go through a third party? I think these are all the little things that need to be ironed out. We have a better understanding of how you build your products and services on a dedicated platform, or either a shared platform, and then you go from there. Yeah. These are the little things that I need to. Yeah. After start thinking about it now, I don't have to wait till I get to that point and I start thinking, okay, how do
I get there? Yeah. And I guess to the point that Andy was making earlier about undifferentiated heavy lifting, if you think about AWS as basically providing all the generic capability you need to build what you need. So a lot of the heavy lifting is done, and all you're adding on top of that is your IP. And it's your IP. We don't get access to it. We don't see it. It's completely yours and completely secure in what you're doing there. But it really allows you to very rapidly prototype a capability, rapidly stand things up, rapidly be able to demonstrate a solution for your customers or for your market. Because all of that heavy lifting, all of the generic stuff is done for you, if that makes sense. So you're not starting, we're not in computer science, so it was a few years ago now, quite a few years ago. You'd start with hello world and you had to do everything from scratch, and it was right down to bare basics. Nowadays, when you look at the build option as opposed to the buy option, a lot, 80% of the work is already done for you in platforms like AWS, and all you've got to do is add your IP on top, that 20% on top, which really makes it work for your use case.
I guess people here, I suspect they just want sometimes to have one-to-one conversation with you. So if we just right now, and maybe if you guys want to have this one-to-one chat, I will then wait for you guys. And if you have private conversations, I don't think online there's no more questions.
All right.
So
well, yeah, I'll put my card there. We're happy to stick around until we've got the time.
Probably like the next 10-15 minutes, and then
but yeah, reach out. on email. Happy to put you guys in touch with the right people to continue the conversation as needed. Was that useful for you all? Is that good information? Worth your time? Thank you.
Just
We are just